Hello, it's Lou with David for Life, the Basic Manual, and we're talking about Manchester United versus Benfica, May the 29th, 1968, the first time that an English team had won the European Cup.
So Lee, you were at the game and this is the programme. Can you show us the programme? Okay, so this is the programme from that European Cup final, Manchester United Benfica. And what were your emotions on that day? How did you feel about the whole thing?
Well, it was a fantastic evening, and I remember hugging people, complete strangers. There were tears, there was great emotion. You couldn't really have, that was for me the highlight of all my watching United over 50 years. To see them finally win that European Cup at Wembley in front of so many of their own supporters. There was very few Portuguese supporters there that night. United had played very well really throughout the game. Were just lapsed towards the end when they gave the equalising goal, and in fact, as I mentioned earlier, could have lost the game but for Alex Stepney's superb save. But it was one of these things, I suppose it was fated to be. Those that were looking down on the ground from the heavens from the disaster at Munich would have smiled and nodded their heads and savoured the moment just like the rest of us. It was a magnificent evening, and one that any of us that were there will never forget. Going back 10 years, of course, we know that the tragic Munich Air Crash had devastated the club, and United were having to rebuild really from the bottom rung right up to the top. There were a number of survivors from the flight, and in fact 2 of them 10 years later were in the team that played at Wembley against Benfica and won the trophy. So coming up to the final, United's team for the final was Alex Stepney in goals. Alex Stepney was a fine goalkeeper signed from Chelsea and played for United for about 12 seasons. And managed even to win the FA Cup with them in 1977. The fullbacks were Shea Brennan, who was sadly passed away now, era international, who scored 2 goals actually in the game straight after Munich as a young kid when they beat Sheffield Wednesday 3-0 in the FA Cup in February 1958. The left back was Tony Dunn. He was a very fast, quick fullback, and also a great servant to United, having taken over from Noel Campbell. The right half, as I used to call them in those days, was Paddy Crerand, who does of course work for United now, and he was a tremendous signing from Celtic in 1963 and also played for many years for the club. Centre half was Bill Foulkes, who was a Munich survivor. He was a fine centre half, having been converted from a full-back, and also played for England, I think, just on 1 occasion. Left half, of course, was the almost legendary Nobby Stiles. Nobby played, of course, for United in the team leading up to the final, and was, of course, a member of Sir Alf Ramsey's World Cup winning team in 1966. George Best wore the number 7 shirt. He was, of course, we don't have to go into too much detail about him, another legendary figure, born in Belfast, made his debut in 1963 against West Bromwich Albion, and played through to United into the early 70s, where of course problems overtook him, and we know the story there. The number 8 shirt, as it was in those days, was worn by Brian Kidd. Brian was 19 on the day of the final in 1968 and scored a goal as well to celebrate his birthday, and played for England. He played for United and played for Arsenal, and was another great player in that era. Number 9, of course, was Bobby Charlton, Sir Bobby Charlton, as he later became, another survivor, 21-year-old at the time of the Munich Air Crash, played in the 1966 World Cup winning team, and played through until the early 70s when he retired, and of course is now a club director. Number 10 was David Sadler, and he played really because Dennis Law was injured. He missed the final with a knee injury, and David Sadler came into the team. He was what they called in those days a utility player. He could play midfield, he played full-back, and of course he played centre-half as well, and also was an England international. And the team was finally made up by Johnny Aston. Now, Johnny Aston was a much maligned player who played for United for quite a number of years. His father also, of course, played for United, And everybody you speak to about the final say that this was Johnny Aston's greatest game. He was a player who was dashing up and down the wing and causing problems for Benfica defenders all night, and was a really excellent performer on the evening. Now, going through to the final itself, the match itself finished in a 4-1 success for United, who, as I say, reached the final for the first time that year, having been in a number of semi-finals, and lifted the trophy for the first time. The game itself was very closely contested throughout the 90 minutes, the first 90 minutes, and United took the lead with Bobby Charlton heading, unusually for him, heading home a goal which looked as though it would secure a victory. But in the closing minutes, Jamie Grasser equalised for Benfica, and then there was one of those heart-stopping moments that we've seen in many games with United, where Eusebio went through one-on-one with Alex Stepney, and you would have probably put your house on him scoring. And he hit a tremendous low shot, but Stepney was equal to it. He went down and not only stopped the shot, he held on to it as well. And in typical sportsmanlike manner, Eusebio went up to him and congratulated Stepney as the goalkeeper was throwing the ball out to set up another attack for United. Of course, the match then went into extra time, and United clinched the game with 3 goals in 8 minutes in the first period of extra time. Bobby Charlton scored another goal, but it was George Best who scored the first one straight after the start of extra time. When he ran through the defence, rounded the goalkeeper and slotted the ball into the net. Bobby Charlton's goal was the 4th goal of the night. Brian Kidd celebrated his birthday with the 3rd goal, heading the ball in after he'd been blocked on the line, and United were rampant in that period. The game was settled, and the last 15 minutes of extra time just drifted by with Benfica knowing that they had no chance of getting back in the game, and the trophy was finally going to be handed over to Matt Busby, who was, of course, a lucky survivor of the crash 10 years ago. There was tremendous emotion at the game. I remember that as a 15-year-old kid. I went to the game myself. I've got the programme still here, which I look at very regularly to bring back the memories of the game. Remember travelling down to Wembley in the car, and the atmosphere, everybody who seemed to be going that day, it's full of emotion, and people literally after the game were crying, they were hugging each other, and celebrations ran on long into the night. That was really the pinnacle point, the Everest for that team, because after that the 68 winning team managed to reach the semi-final the following season when they lost unfortunately to AC Milan. But the team was starting to break up then. Age was catching up on players like Bill Foulkes, Paddy Crerand and 1 or 2 more. And within a year or so, Matt Busby had resigned. Wilf McGuinness had taken over for a short period, and that followed that into a period of turmoil, really, where we had a number of managers and really never picked up again until the mid-70s when we won the FA Cup under Tommy Docherty, and having been relegated, regained our first division status as it was then, and things started to improve in the 80s and onwards from there. That's just, of course, prior to the arrival of Sir Alex Ferguson in November 1986.